Feeding your cannabis plants can be confusing, but not anymore. In this video, we're going to simplify the process for you. Hey, but before we do, today's video is brought to you by Real Growers Grow Dots, the easiest way to feed your high-value plants. You mix Grow Dots in once at the beginning of your grow, and they feed your plants all the way to harvest. You don't have to worry about nutrient burn or nutrient lockout. Grow Dots does all the hard work for you. Check them out over at realgrowers.com. And while you're there, use coupon code Scotty420 to get 20% off your first order. Now let's get back to the show. All right, Heisey, let's jump into this.
Okay, so this was the most intimidating thing for me as a new grower, specifically the confusing feeding schedules.
Yeah, this was exciting for me. I got to buy more bottles.
Okay.
When you went into the hydro store, they had 10, 15 bottles. Some lines had 20 bottles. And the idea was you split it up and hydro guys would make a lot of money, or the owners of the companies would make a lot of money. It's not that hard. As a matter of fact, it's really quite simple. In 5 minutes or less, we can completely understand nutrients, or enough for you to be an excellent grower. The first thing I would want to go through, the biggest idea, is that organic and synthetic nutrients, fundamentally different. Organic nutrients are these giant molecules. They've got the synthetics inside them. They've got that ionic form of nutrient inside it, but it has to be broken down first. So that's why organics are really neat. They're like a slow release, as they require the microbes to break them down and process it into this plant available. It's called an ionic form, and that's how they work. That's why they work so slowly, and they just grow really good weed. When we talk about synthetics, they're already in that ionic form. The chemists or the formulators that made our fertilizer skipped the path of it having to be microbially broken down, and once you put this, it's immediately plant available. So when you mix this stuff up, or with Grow Dots, when water hits it, the nutrient that comes out of there is immediately plant available. So organics, you have to let it break down to become plant available into its ionic form. With synthetics, it's already in its ionic form. So I'm going to talk to you about nutrients in their ionic form. Actually, no, this is about nutrients in general. So this should make sense for anybody.
Well, let's start with the synthetics, because that's what I go with. And I noticed this thing on pretty much all of them. There's these three numbers at the top of the bag or the bottle or whatever. You said NPK.
NPK, yeah. And now that I think about it, though, this applies to organics as well. Organics have NPK. Organics, we're going to talk about secondary and trace elements. Organics has all this. So, yeah, we'll start with NPK, the macronutrients. Take 100 pounds, and then that 4, 2, 4, or the 16, 5, 11, you add those numbers up, and that's how much of that NP and K of those macronutrients are in that, I guess, by weight, in that formulation by weight. So when you go get a 222, that's 6 pounds of macronutrients with 100 pounds of something else. So just kind of remember that when you look at the numbers.
94 pounds of something else.
Oh, whoa.
All right, so what does NP and K stand for?
Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Okay. Those are your major building blocks. If I'm trying to think of humanize it, carbs, fat, and proteins is sometimes, we have three major building blocks. So do the plants. So nitrogen, you associate it with green growth, with lots of vegetative growth. Phosphorus and potassium, they're needed throughout the growth cycle, but nitrogen is needed in vegetative more. So you're going to see that high first number. It's nitrogen is the first number. P, which is phosphorus, is the second number, and the P was taken, so K is potassium. Yes, the chemists, man, I don't know.
And I've noticed that on like Grow Dots, they have more nitrogen for the first couple of weeks. And then I've noticed some of the mixing schedules, they also have more nitrogen for the first couple of weeks. You mentioned green, leafy, what's going on there?
Yeah, in vegetative growth, we're photosynthesizing. We're building this plant material. We're building a lot of it. It's going from a plant this big to, a plant, God, I went in my veg. The plants are as big as me. So that requires a lot of food. It's not magic. Those plants aren't made out of, out of nothing. They're actually made out of CO2, and then it needs plenty of nitrogen. It needs plenty of phosphorus and potassium as well, but it needs lots of nitrogen for that green growth.
Okay, and you mentioned the green. The nitrogen makes the plant green.
Yep.
Why is that green important when it comes to the lights?
You want those leaves to be green. Green absorbs, that green color absorbs blue and red. Those are your photosynthetic peaks. And there's a little bit of controversy over it, but it doesn't use the green light, or it doesn't use it the same way that it uses the red and the blue and the other colors of the spectrum.
Yeah, just from what I know about how color and light works, black absorbs everything.
Right.
White reflects everything, and usually when you're looking at something, the color that you're seeing is the color that's being reflected off of it. So that nitrogen helps reflect that green light that the plant doesn't need to absorb.
Yes, and chlorophyll, it builds chlorophyll. It's one of the major building blocks in that. Chlorophyll is responsible for the green, so yes, sir.
Okay, so in P and K, that's the macronutrients.
Yep.
Now, there's other kinds of nutrients as well.
Yeah, secondary, and they are important. Primary, second place, pretty good, right? Secondary nutrients are used in decent amounts. I'm thinking of calcium, magnesium, sulfur. When we add CalMag, we're at 10 mils per gallon. Sometimes you're adding a decent amount of CalMag. They can use a lot of, I keep on saying CalMag like it's the same thing. Magnesium. I use Epsom salts. They use a lot of that. So secondary nutrients are very important.
All right, and then you said micronutrients. What's going on there?
Well, if I got first or second or micro. Micro are used, I think of those as a vitamin. When I think of like multivitamins, I think that's a micronutrient, or that is a micronutrient for us. It's things like manganese. Iron is another one. You need it for proper plant growth, but you need it in like a fraction of a parts per million. Some of these things are needed in 0.2 part per million, 1 part per million, and we're used to having, 800 parts per million of fertilizer. So they're needed in these tiny fractional amounts, and it's not hard to get these. So please don't spend a fortune on a micronutrient package. Don't go buy a separate bottle of micronutrients. It costs them a few pennies to put this in when you buy like General Hydroponics or some other nutrient solution. So if they're separating out their micros, shouldn't do business with them.
Well, I was going to say GrowDots has macros, secondary, and micros all in one mix.
Yes, okay. Absolutely. And the thing I have to think the least about is the micronutrients package. Very simple.
All right. Now, we talked about organic versus synthetic at the beginning, and you said that organics kind of break down slower, and synthetics, which is what I've been using, they go straight to the plant. They're immediately plant available.
Yeah.
And one of my biggest fears about that is nutrient burn on my plants. Can you explain how nutrient burn occurs? And let's go over some ways on how to avoid it.
Yeah, we talked about that ionic form or that synthetic plant nutrient being immediately plant available. So if you pour it on the roots and then it drips down, or you pour it on the soil and it drips down onto the roots, no choice. It's getting in there. So if you have too much of it, it is taken up into the plant, and it's going to burn the plant. You're tricking it. That's why people love organics. That's why they're natural. We're tricking it. We're playing Mother Nature here. So we can force feed it a lot, but we can also overfeed it.
We're mainlining the nutrients into the plant.
Hey, that sounds so ugly, okay?
Okay, so help me out. Just by looking at my plant, is it possible to tell that I might be burning it with nutrients?
Yes. You'll see the tip. You'll see the tip burn. First off, they call it clawing over, but you'll see the leaf start bending over a little bit. It'll look stressed.
Wait, the tip or the sides of the leaf?
The sides of the leaf will bend over, and then a telltale sign is the tip will burn. You'll see a little burn on the tip, and that'll tell you that it's just flexing all it can. It's handling all it can. So back off. Give it a little bit of plain water.
Okay, yeah, let's jump into some tips on how to avoid nutrient burn, because a lot of growers are like me. We're using synthetics. We've got to worry about that. One immediate one that comes to mind, I've been using GrowDots, so I haven't had to worry about nutrient burn. Explain why using something like GrowDots helps avoid nutrient burn.
It's a technology. It's a controlled release technology. It's temperature controlled, and it releases only a certain amount of nutrients per day. I guess it's really time controlled. The two variables are time, moisture, and temperature. So at a certain temperature, even if it has a little bit of water or a lot of water, it will release the same amount of nutrient every day. That's really important, because if you go in and you're like, oh, it's water day today, let me do 1,000 parts per million, then I'll come by tomorrow and I'll do 600 parts per million. You can burn your plants. It is just direct access to those roots. So there's a couple tricks, and the big one that really improved my quality and having to pay so much attention to watering was using soil microbes. And of course I sell Recharge, but it really helped me. The first thing is mycorrhizae. If you can get mycorrhizae, mycofungus, rhizae root, it's a fungus root. It actually attaches to the outside of your roots or the plant's roots, and it makes a coating. That coating is able to hold more moisture. It's able to fend off pathogens. When a pathogen wants to come over and bite on a root, it bites on this fungus instead. So when that nutrient particle, that immediately available nutrient, wants to get assimilated into the root, it has to go through this mycorrhizae, this fungal network first. And this fungal network doesn't want to kill the plant. It actually needs the plant to survive. So it regulates that nutrient. So it's just much less sensitive. When you're starting to use mycorrhizae, if you couple that with bacteria, which bacteria are sticky, don't make me, I have to find a better analogy of when you wake up with, you have to brush your teeth. Yeah, you have to brush them off. That's how sticky they are. Within 12 hours, they bonded. So they're bonding to those soil particles. Well, when that ionic nutrient, that tiny little nutrient particle comes by, it sticks to it. It's just the bacteria are sticky. So now you've got this little organic situation going on in your root system. So you do have some of the benefits of that controlled, I don't know if it'd be a controlled release, but it's actually the control.
Well, they hold on to it until the plant sends them a signal that it needs it.
Yes.
And then they go make that exchange.
Exactly. And don't forget these microbes, whether it's the beneficial fungi, the mycorrhizae fungi, or the bacteria, they're not intelligent like we are, but they're smart enough to know that they want to live. And so in order to want to live, they can do things. They have a nutrient particle. The plant can make things with the sunlight and photosynthesize and can bake all that stuff into sugars and send it back down to them. So they all work together to form this symbiosis and to keep the plant alive.
And so what they kind of do, the mycorrhizae and the beneficial bacteria, what they do is if you do accidentally put too much nutrients in there, they're going to hold on to the excess until the plant actually needs it.
Yes, because they're getting sugars fed to them back from that plant. So they are definitely keeping an eye on whether that plant is doing well or not. But those are my tips for feeding your cannabis plants. What about you? What's your best tip for feeding your plants? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, please hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, share this video with the other grower that you know, and check out the other couple videos YouTube's recommending. I hope you will dig them.